Does it bother anybody else that I have all these tabs open up here? Raise your hand and testify if you think that I have too many tabs open. Look, I need these tabs. I have to keep them. I can't get rid of them. Here's got a lot of Google Forms that I have that students are still getting work in. I always have to have my Google Drive open in my email. That's my OCU stuff for College Credit Plus, whatever. Like this one, Adobe Creative Cloud. I can use my teacher a teacher discount to get like $19.99 per month if I do Adobe, so I can start making like my own podcast and whatnot. I got to keep this one. Somebody said something about, what's the American government ever done to stop the Klan? And I thought, well, that's a good question. So I looked it up, and the FBI says that here's all the things that we've done over the years to try to undermine the Klan. So, but I haven't had a chance to read that yet, and that's been up for probably 3 months now. So I've got to keep all of these tabs so I won't forget. And some of these I need, like Quizlet, Kahoot. I could probably close those out. All right, fine. To help you feel better, I'll close these out. There. Oh, no, I got to watch this. Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator. I need to watch that. It's a TED Talk, right? You gotta watch TED Talk. Subscribe. I don't know why I'm not subscribed to TED Talks. You gotta do that. Okay. Anyway, here's where we're at. We are at Intro to Lateral Reading. We're trying to figure out what this whole lateral reading thing is all about. Notice there's a level 1 and a level 2, and I picked the level 2. I picked the higher level thinking, the more complex thing, because I looked at level 1. I thought my students in my first and ninth period classes are much more sophisticated than the basics that they have. So I picked a level 2. The basic was just like a tweet that you're supposed to analyze, and it was a fake account anyway. So I did level 2, which has to do with the minimum wage. And I'm going to kind of minimize myself here and go down here. Now, here is the article that I had you yesterday look at. It's from minimumwage.com. And it's, making certain claims. And you can see here, the claim is Denmark has a higher minimum wage. So the labor costs are higher in Denmark than they are in the United States. And that means the result is higher labor cost means higher prices for goods. And that if you compare apples to apples, that it costs 17% more in Denmark to eat a Big Mac than it does here in the US. Of course, this is 2014, so I don't know about all those prices, right? But it's basically like the dollar menu here, things that would cost $1 here are going to cost $1.41 over there, which, you might not say is that big of a deal, but when you add all that up, that's a lot of money. It just costs a lot more to live in a place, Denmark, where there's a higher minimum wage. Okay, so that's the claim they're making. Here's the thing, is what the Stanford History Education Group is trying to get you to do. And notice I'm getting a lot of this stuff from the Stanford, the Civic Online Reasoning Organization, which is funded by the Stanford History Education Group, right there. Okay. So having said that, one thing that they want you to do when you come to a website where you've never been there before and you don't know anything about it, you should, they say, don't read vertically. Do not read vertically. Reading vertically means just reading through this and being like, that makes a good argument. I think it's right. Or don't read this and start thinking, I disagree with them totally because I want a higher minimum wage. And so this stinks, right? Because remember, please remember, just because you agree or disagree with a source doesn't make it necessarily credible or not credible, right? If you come to this page right here thinking, it's criticizing the minimum wage, so that means I don't like it. Well, okay, you don't have to like it, but calling it credible or not, based on whether you like it or not, is not a good way to go about it, because you could be wrong. If your dislike of people who want a lower minimum wage is high enough that it keeps you from reading through an article and finding like some of the facts behind it, right? Then that means that you have a closed mind. And the opposite is true. If you hate the minimum wage and you read an article that's for the minimum wage and you say, this article is wrong because I disagree with it, then you are closing your mind off to other points of view that might have a point. So the first thing to do is not necessarily, according to the Stanford History Education Group, is not to just read vertically up and down and be like, I like it, or I think that the font is pretty, or it looks professional, or I don't have any desire to go look at anything else. I mean, if that's the case, then that's the case, but you're not being as good of a digital citizen, if that makes sense. You're more likely to be persuaded by misinformation. So what I'm hoping that you did yesterday, and I don't know if very many of you did this or not, is I want you to ask that very first question that's on the board over there. How do you know if a source is trustworthy or not? Well, the first question you can ask if you wanted to is, who's behind the information? So instead of reading vertically here, reading this up and down, instead we want to read laterally. Go over instead of go up and down. That means open up a new browser, click, and search. And in this case, search for who's behind the information. Now, look, you could do this. And a lot of people do this, and there's nothing wrong with doing this, right? And I actually had you do this on the name, image, licensing thing on Monday. Go to the About. And if you look at the About, the minimum wage is a project for the Employment Policies Institute, right? And you keep looking through this, you're like, oh, wow, look at this. It's a nonprofit. Oh, okay. So they don't have a profit motive. Okay. Well, there you go. That's good. What else did they say here? Nonpartisan research. Oh, that means that they're not highly favoring Democrats or Republicans, right? Nonpartisan means pretty close to meaning unbiased or impartial. That sounds great. Now, what's the problem with just stopping here at the About Us and taking their word for it? Right? So you can take their word for it, but that's not necessarily a good thing. So one of the things that I did was I clicked on news reports. This is what they're telling you about themselves. right? Here's the Employment Policies Institute, and you're just scanning it. Just scan. This person once again puts union power ahead of workers. Interesting. This sounds like an anti-union article here. I know that labor unions are liked by liberals. So that seems to make me think that maybe this is a conservative website. Interesting. Biden destroys restaurants to save them. What? Biden ignores evidence. Interesting. It seems like this source is making fun of Biden, criticizing Biden. So that might again reiterate the fact that maybe these people favor Republicans over Democrats. Conservatives favor conservatives over liberals. I mean, that's what I seem to be getting here from this just by scanning through this. Now, for some people, that's enough, right? But, if you just go here, recent research, what is it? Actually, I think a lot of this seemed like there's a lot of stats and so on and so forth. So, let's not worry about that. It just FYI, if you wanted to know how Ohio's minimum wage ranks compared to others, you could go to. They say right here, click here to find wage rates and unemployment numbers for your state. And then you click on that and you get that. So, I don't know. That's kind of disappointing. I don't know if it's unprofessional. I don't know if that makes you hate this or not. But actually, do I have something that... You could look this up. State minimum wage list. I looked this up yesterday, I think. Now, notice I'm just doing vertical reading right now. I'm not doing lateral reading. I should be going out to find out what this pay core thing is about and so on and so forth. For the sake of time, I'm not right now because I just wanted to make a point here. Notice if you live in Alabama, they have the same minimum wage in Alabama that the federal government has. So the minimum wage in Alabama is $7.25. Alaska is $10.30. Arkansas is there. California has, I think, the highest one, $14. Georgia pays a $5.15 an hour, or requires businesses to pay a $5.15 minimum wage unless your business falls under the Fair Labor Standards Act, which basically is pretty much everybody except farmers for the most part. So almost everybody in Georgia is going to get the federal minimum wage. Several minimum wages in the double figures here. Notice that tends to be more Republican states and more Southern states are, at the federal minimum wage right there. Ohio requires an $8.80 minimum wage. So it's a little bit higher than the federal, right? Just in case you wanted to know that. Now, obviously, I could do all sorts of looking into this, but I just wanted to kind of show you that real quick. Okay, anyway. Okay, so we're going back here. Here's what they recommend, the Stanford History Education Group, is don't just read up and down and don't just read their about. Like, actually go and do research. So here's what I did. We found out that by their own website, that they are funded by or backed by. This website is backed by the Employment Policies Institute, the EPI. So if you go to a Google search and you type in Employment Policies Institute and you do a search, this is what you'll get. Now notice what I did was I put it in quotes. See that? See that little thing up there? In quotes. That means that Google will search that as a core, not as three separate words. Right? So it'll keep those three words together. And that's sometimes a more efficient way of finding things. If you want literally this and not, if you want literally this phrase, then put it in quotes. Anyway, okay, so I've done that, right? And here's what I found. I found Employment Policies Institute website. Like that's their place. That's basically, if I go here, I'm not really lateral reading because what I would be doing is going to the source to find out about the source. And sometimes we know sources don't always tell everything about themselves, right? Now, I could go to Wikipedia, and I do want to address Wikipedia eventually, right? And we can go there in a minute, actually. Well, why not? Let's just go there now. No, I don't want that. I don't want to do that. Close. Anyway, okay. If I scan through this, fiscally conservative. Fiscal means money-wise conservative. So maybe not socially conservative, but fiscally conservative. Nonprofit think tank. Okay. Aimed towards reducing the minimum wage. That's what Wikipedia says. It was established in 1991 by Rick Berman. Interesting. Huh. Okay. Go back. What if I go to SourceWatch? Shoot. I said shoot. Don't think I said something else. SourceWatch looks a lot like Wikipedia. So, I mean, doesn't that look like Wikipedia to you? I mean, it's almost like word for word, it seems. So, I don't know. Oh, New York Times. Interesting. What are they saying? Economic research. Michael Saltzman. I don't know who that is. But if oh no, are you paywalling me? Richard Berman again. So it seems like Wikipedia might be right about him. What else? Eugene, Oregon.gov. That's a .gov. That might be a good one. Oh, Salon. Okay, Salon. Corporate America's new scam. Industry PR firm poses as a think tank. How the media fell for the propagandist, respectable-sounding Employment Policies Institute. And it looks like they're supposed to be showing me a picture of Richard Berman. Interesting. Oh, this sounds like this article is for a higher minimum wage. Interesting. We have spent 20 years tracking disinformation and spin, and Richard Berman has long been one of our favorite research subjects. Oh my. Berman is in this. Wow. So this seems to be saying that he's not as independent and nonpartisan as we think. I mean, look at this. His clients have included tobacco companies, alcohol beverage industry, yuck. He was once profiled as Dr. Evil. Oh my goodness. This Berman guy. Wow. Huh. So it seems like what they're trying to say is that this may not be, this Salon article is trying to say maybe this Richard Berman guy is not a good source, or he has a motive. Remember, he has a motive. Remember, we're supposed to look at motives, and the motive behind him, which is behind this, is to get out information about the minimum wage. And what he's doing is he's being paid by restaurant industries, restaurant corporations to try to talk about the minimum wage should be lower. So, is he a good source? Huh. Interesting. If you find out more about let's see, there's something on here that I wanted to. Yeah, he receives his money from restaurants and other sources. So basically, he's getting his money from people who have a vested interest in keeping the minimum wage down so that they can pay their workers, keep paying their workers less so that the restaurants can make more money. So now, I don't know if that makes you think that this minimumwage.com is a good or bad website, but let me tell you what they think. The Stanford History Education Group is saying here that if on that lateral reading thing that you did, right, about how reliable is the minimum wage source and so on and so forth, right, when you copy down the websites, on that one, they're saying that what you should have done is if you were if you're at the mastery level of understanding this lateral reading thing, that you would have gone laterally to open up a different browser and researched the guy behind it. And that you should have come to the idea, the understanding that the site, you should reject the minimum wage website as a reliable source. And you should be able to clearly say why it's not a reliable source. And that should have something to do with their motive and Richard Berman's motive. Students, if you're just at the emerging level, like you're getting there, but you're not quite to mastery level, you can reject their website as a reliable source, but you can't clearly identify the rationale behind it. And if you're at the beginner level, you might say, oh, the source looks trustworthy because it looks trustworthy and it sounds like it's got research behind it, numbers and stats. Wow. Right? That's what the people who made yesterday's form that you did here, this one, are saying that that's the answer you should have given. And maybe the best answer would have also had in it Richard Berman. Now, I know that not everybody talked about Richard Berman, right? So hopefully you're learning something from this exercise we're doing here. But I want to throw a little monkey wrench into it. You might have seen these charts around, maybe not. If you haven't, I'm going to introduce you to a chart like this, right? And what these charts do is they, excuse me, they kind of rate media sites. Notice down here, you have liberal left, you have conservative right, and then you have kind of like down the middle, less bias, right? They're kind of like unbiased. And then you have contains inaccurate information, lies, misleading information, right? And then it kind of goes up to all the way up here as fact reporting and not giving you a spin or giving you a mixture of facts, but also giving analysis, which also means, they're putting a spin on it. They're letting their bias show. And that right in here, is opinion, or there's a high variation of reliability because at one point you could get the spin and the other point you could get a fact, and it's hard to really tell, right? So just so you know, they put InfoWars with Alex Jones like way down here as far as highly conservative and misleading, right? They put Occupy Democrats as, high, very selective, unfair propaganda and left over here. They put Fox News as right here, so it's very opinion oriented and sometimes the reliability is not so high. Ben Shapiro as well right there, and it's definitely on the conservative side. Notice here though, Fox News Sunday and Fox Business is considered much more reliable than regular Fox News, just so you know. Wall Street Journal is considered more conservative, but on the higher side of factual reporting. The BBC and AP and Reuters are kind of in the middle, meaning they're more about facts, less about spin. NPR starts to get into and NBC starts to get into the liberal side. New York Times does too. CNN is, down a little bit. They're giving a lot more on the web anyway. They're giving more analysis and spin. The television program CNN is much more opinionated, and then like Chris Cuomo's 9 o'clock segment on CNN is getting into way left spin and so on. And look right here above Chris Cuomo, Salon is over here on the left, and they're definitely giving analysis, which can include a high variation of reliability. So again, I ask, that article, that Salon article, where'd it go? Right? Like, it's for a higher minimum wage. It's talking smack about Rich Berman and the Employment Policies Institute and the minimumwage.com website. But do you trust Salon automatically just because Salon said it? Wouldn't it be a good idea to know what Salon's, perspective and bias is too? Because they might have a much different spin on things than somebody who would maybe be more in the middle, like The Economist, which is higher on the fact rating than, Salon is, and more centrist. So let me throw another monkey wrench into the thing. Like, should you even trust these charts? I mean, how reliable is your source news? Oh, here it is. Should you trust media bias charts? Like, even these things may not be 100% trustworthy, because what if they have an agenda to go get Fox News or CNN News or Rachel Maddow or Chris Cuomo or Ben Shapiro, right? So like this starts to turn into a lot of work. I'm not sure if you're willing to do all of this work that we're talking about, but at the very least, what we can say is, if you don't want to be fooled, if you want to be open, if you want to be knowledgeable, it might take some work. So that's that. Thank you for listening. I'm going to have you now I'm going to have a handout for you right here. It looks like this, but it's a paper handout. It's going to have you open up a website that looks like this. Why we should raise the minimum wage. And what it's going to ask you, this web worksheet is going to ask you to do is to laterally read. Don't vertically read at first. Open up a website to check into these people right here. That's what's due for me. And hopefully that will be a way for you to show that you've learned something with lateral reading. All right. Thanks for your attention.